Hello princesses! Today I'm going to be talking about the Peripera Clear Watercolor Velvet Cheeks. I picked this up when I was doing my full face of Peripera earlier on in the year, and it was one of the only products for Peripera that I could actually find either the entire colour range for or like just being a cheek product in general. Peripera didn't really seem to have very many cheek products out, though they have a ton of lip products of course. On a day-to-day basis, I do definitely prefer to use powder blushes because I find them easier to blend. However, I do like using cream blushes during the winter because I do love that dewy glow. So even though I wasn't really looking for cream blushes right now, it's definitely a product that I'm interested to use in the cooler weather. So the product description says, creamy gel blusher applies smoothly and leaves a noticeable bloom of colour on cheeks. The packaging of these blushes is very simple and minimal. You can clearly see the colours through the lid, which makes them really easy to identify, and the outer packaging is small enough to stack and store nicely. There are 6 shades in this collection, and there is quite a nice range of shades for most skin tones. I really like the inclusion of the Lavender and the Dusty Rose shade, which are a little bit more unusual colours. Rosy Flesh is a bright pinky red shade. This shade is really quite pigmented and absolutely freaked me out to start with because I really didn't want to look like I was dressing up as a clown. However, when it's applied sparingly, it does look like a really natural flush on my skin, and this is a shade that would look really beautiful on darker skin tones too. Affable Peach is a beautiful true peach shade. This shade looks a little bit orange in the pan, but it does swatch like a beautiful true peach. I think that this shade looks really natural on my skin. It's not like a flush, but because my skin is already warm toned, it does blend up beautifully and is one of my favourite shades to wear for a more natural day-to-day makeup look. Vitality Apricot is a pastel orange shade. I'm not a huge fan of orange shades on my skin, but this one isn't awful. It's not a shade that I reach for at all, but that's really just personal preference. I love that these cream blushes leave my skin looking dewy and fresh. They're definitely going to get a lot of use for me during winter time. Spring Blooming is a warm pastel pink shade. This is such a Becca colour and a shade that I get the most wear out of. I just think that the colour is so flattering on my skin tone, and it's one that complements most of my clothing and lipsticks as well, so it's an easy choice. I applied these blushes using my fingers to start with, but I found that they apply way better with sponges or cushion puffs. I found that when I applied them with my fingers, I would actually remove a lot of the foundation underneath, which looks really awful, but when I apply them with sponges, it just leaves the most beautiful flush of colour. Soft Lavender is a muted purple shade. This shade is very cute, but I don't think that it suits my skin tone that well. Purple counteracts yellow, and since my skin is very yellow, the purple blush just makes my cheeks look really bright. I love this blush paired with any pastel blue, pink or white clothing, but if I wear any jewel tones, it can make me look odd. I definitely have to decide on my outfit before using this blush, which is a little bit restricting. Wonder Rose is a deep dusty rose shade. This is a beautiful shade, but not one that I think looks good on my skin. For me, I think that it is a little bit too dark, and because I try to share out the colour so it's not so intense, it does start to look a little bit patchy. These blushes have a super soft texture which makes them easy to blend, and I find that these blushes last perfectly all day on my skin, which is awesome. I really love using these blushes when I'm looking for a beautiful, dewy and fresh finish to my cheeks. It's still fairly warm here in New Zealand. We are pretty much in autumn at the moment, so I still prefer using a powder blush because I find that it helps to keep any oil at bay, whereas the cream blushes, because they do have that more dewy finish, even if I powder over the top of them, they do look a little bit shiny, which I think is really cute during the winter, but not something that in summer necessarily looks as good on me. I think that this shade is a huge plus for me, and I think that there is something in this range for almost everybody. For me, there are only 2 shades that I don't like, which are Vitality Apricot, which I keep calling Vitality Orange, as well as Wonder Rose, which I find is just a little bit too dark and too intense for my skin tone, and I just don't like oranges. but most likely if they're too dark for me, they're going to look really beautiful on deeper skin tones. So it's nice to have some of those colours in there as well, because not everybody is super pale. I do find them easy to apply, especially if I'm using a sponge or a cushion puff. So generally what I will do is apply my foundation or cushion base, and then using whatever tool that I use to apply that, which is most likely going to be a cushion puff, I just use that into the pan and then dab it onto my cheeks, and I find that this blends it out the best. Obviously you can't reuse the cushion puff after that because it has a blush on it, but I don't tend to reuse my cushion puffs anyway, so it's not as problematic for me. These are pretty inexpensive at about $7 US each, so if you're looking for a really pretty cream blush, these are definitely ones that I would recommend, especially if you like the colour range. But thank you guys so much for watching this review, and I will see you next time. Bye!